This is where we belong.
Starfield has launched with over 6 million players according to Microsoft and Bethesda, but that hasn't stopped the concerted efforts to besmirch its name and review bomb it by the three distinct groups working against it. Group number 1 is our console warring tribals. Group number 2 is technically two groups. The anti-pronoun narcissists who are arguing with the pro-pronoun narcissists. Because of course, a game where you create any personality you want for a virtual avatar that doesn't have the genetic pull of biology is the hill you should have your mutual hate-bone argument on whether personality or biology is the sole component of the concept of gender. And lastly, of course, group number 3. The crowd that have missed the point about Starfield being a slow burn universe of an experience, and not a fast-paced pew 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 game that they play in between doses of Ritalin. If you want to abuse the mechanics in the game, go ahead. It's not that type of game. You're not going to get the experience you want. Meaning that the constructive criticisms against the gameplay or against the high PC system specs required to run the game as smoothly as you would prefer are being drowned out by arguments about console wars, the inclusion of pronouns to include that tiny percentage of the population previously not included, and arguments from people that just don't get the feel of what a Bethesda game should be. For these three groups don't actually care for the game. It's just the next vehicle to carry their tribal issues on for extra exposure. The console wars will move to the next game exclusive. The pro and anti-nouners will argue amongst themselves while the rest of us move on and don't get involved unless we're dragged into it. And the short attention span complainers will no doubt move on when their little tantrums are ignored. All that being said, if you were expecting Skyrim or Fallout in space from Starfield, then good news. However, if you were the type of fan who felt some RPG elements from Oblivion, Morrowind and Daggerfall had drifted away from Bethesda's more recent releases, then there's some great news for you. As the game still contains the flashier experiences of Skyrim and Fallout 4, but in more ways harkens back to the slower, more methodical days of Daggerfall, Morrowind and Oblivion. So this makes Starfield the most Bethesda game yet. Full of the DNA and experience Bethesda have learned from all the previous games, possibly melded into the most immersive, balanced Bethesda open world RPG they've ever produced. And yes, that is a bold claim, but as the saying goes, farts are like opinions, everybody has them, and somebody somewhere will think mine stinks. But as I'm currently wearing a spacesuit, I am the only person that will be able to smell it, so I'll let you know later. So, let's get to the meat of this review. We're going to need an overriding theme of what constitutes Bethesda's DNA in their games. Well, I believe that it is the emulation of living worlds with a gaming experience simulated within that encaptures the imagination of the mind's eye into and upon the worlds created before you. Yeah, the less pretentious BS version of that is they are ridiculously immersive and replayable. But how and why are Bethesda's games so immersive and replayable? Well, there are 4 reasons in the whys and 1 reason in the how. And I'm going to start with the least important of the whys and ascend the ladder, explaining how Starfield shows its parentage along the way. Now reason number 4, in 4th place, is the gameplay loop. The gameplay and the loop. The game loop. Yeah, I know. Who'd have thought that's what it meant? You can call this a big call, putting the gameplay loop down at the bottom. But it is Bethesda's weakest aspect of their games. But it really shows just how important the rest of a Bethesda game is to its feel and success, if the mechanics are its weakest part. Movement. It's so simple that few games get it wrong, and Starfield of course hasn't got any problems here. In fact, the new vaulting system and jetpack boost ability have increased the movement abilities from Bethesda's previous games quite nicely. However, navigation, on the other hand, Whilst a barren topographical map with nothing but a GPS dot and sat-nav style guided path in scanner mode is a scary meta emulation of modern societal behaviours, especially in the youngsters who've never seen a map. Yeah, the big cities like New Atlantis not even having digital maps, Google style maps, digital pretend paper maps, not even having them. Yep, damned frustrating. On the flip side, the topographical barren maps could work perfectly, and I say could, on the barren worlds if it included things like rivers and as you explored it was replaced with a Google style map that you uncovered, like a fog of exploration being lifted. The loading screens of movies hiding the fast travel mechanics of the spaceships and the starships could be better. They really needed full movies that play throughout the full loading sequence to get rid of the black screens. It currently feels like each planetary space zone only has one spawn point. You spawn in the planetary space in the same spot regardless of whether you've exited grav jump, flown from another planetary body in the same system, or taken off from the planet's surface. It's a mechanical annoyance and something I will come back to in Reason 1's section for different reasons. So apparently there is a map update in the works at Bethesda due to come out in a future update. They do listen like they did with the Fallout 4 voice protagonist backlash. So yes, we can wait for that. Direct gunplay and melee combat is once again improved from Fallout 4, with the enemies moving and changing tactics enough to be a challenge. Of course, the Bethesda bullet sponge buffoonery returns. Oh dear. Stealth combat is still Bethesda's stealth combat, with the challenges in the skill trees just adding grind to how long it takes to abuse the enemies. Once again, they will watch their buddies drop dead and continue on with their days comically early. Or go back to their day after a few moments of nothing happening. Bethesda's stealth combat AI really needs enemies to have a regroup position on each map that they can retreat to, and then they stay there in caution mode until you've done a full assault against their fortified position or left the immediate area for 6 hours or so. Let's make the wait button useful for more than just shops. Even Metal Gear Solid was doing this years ago. Survival mechanics are not in the game yet. You'll regenerate health slowly over time or after meds, food or sleep as usual, although there are a greater variety of medications for specific status effects. And with the introduction of a Fallout 4 style survival mode, or just waiting for the modders to do it, I can see these effects being something you'll keep an eye on more than just being an inconvenience. The key binding layout for scanner mode, melee attack and grenades. Now this is a pain in the backside. Luckily you can change the initial keys for each. However, the reason I'm mentioning it is simple. Scanner is defaulted to F. Melee is defaulted to V. And photo mode, whilst inside the scanner mode, is defaulted to V. So it's easy to catch scanner and then catch photo mode and then end up entering photo mode whilst simply trying to bop somebody on the head because they're too close. This is even worse for players like myself with nerve damage in my hands, as half the time my fingers, which I can't feel properly, my ring finger and pinky fingers, shall we say, don't do what I tell them, and they rest a bit heavier than they should. So, can you get where this is going? The amount of times when combat got a little bit busy that I ended up having a photograph of myself and going, hey, whoa, wait. Selfie first. Yeah. That is one hell of an irritation. Now I know it doesn't work this way on the controller. I have a third-party PlayStation 4 controller. And I downloaded the mod to get the right buttons for that, so old man doesn't have to remember how to do it. And the bash is on the stick, I believe, and the scanner is on the left front trigger, I believe. So they're nowhere near each other like they are on the keyboard. But on the keyboard, bang, straight into selfie mode instead of bopping somebody on the head. Now you could say, use a controller, but why should I lose the greatness of a mouse? The weakness of the keyboard and mouse setup is the keyboard, not the mouse. The new Oblivion-inspired persuasion minigame is blended with the percentage chance of success mechanic from Fallout 3, and it's bloody clever. You have a system built into the normal conversation tree that has the difficulty of the phrases you can choose displayed next to them, with only a limited number of chances to collect enough points before the end of the game. Armed with the knowledge that the percentage chance of success mechanic brought back from Fallout 3 is always adding some chance of failure at the first chance. However, if you succeed, you get a rollover bonus, making the next choice never fail, meaning you're trying to juggle the chances left with the difficulty of the next line and the possibility of failure at first, or whether you can roll over a simple line into a difficult line. A nice meld of the previous systems. Now, Starship Combat. Up until Starfield, Bethesda had introduced two types of vehicle combat to their games. Skyrim had the horseback riding, and then there was the dragons, and Fallout 4's vertibirds were essentially the dragons. So, in Skyrim you were in critical control of the horse and lucky to hit anything, at least on PC. Whether the slower analog movement of controllers changed that, I don't know. On the dragons, or in Fallout 4's vertibirds, you pretty much had weapon aim control with the vehicle mainly flying themselves. You could give them a few hints about where to go, but that was about it. So the fact that the Starship Combat has come out as smooth as it has is quite the achievement. I know many flight sim enthusiasts aren't convinced, and the movement is apparently more atmospheric than spacey, but that is hopefully a question of control schemes, mods, modders to the rescue, or just taste. Having said all that about the gameplay, the Bethesda universe game loop is about exploring, looting, getting stronger, and choosing how you're going to influence it. There's always another quest, always another hoard of loot to sell, and always another place to explore so you can find those quests and that loot. Well, that was reason number 4. Reason number 3 is the quest system. Now, Bethesda's games are full of 5 types of quests. They have the main quests. So for the Elder Scrolls games, this has been saving the world. For Fallout, finding your family. So what did Starfield go with? Well, it's gone with a mystery message in your head about the nature of the universe. But each game in the Bethesda universes has had a different approach to how urgent or non-urgently they've approached it. Morrowind literally just gave you some directions, non-urgent orders, and said, report to an NPC, get out this building, you're on your own. Oblivion put you smack bang in front of the Emperor as he was assassinated and gave you an urgent quest to find his son and close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
Find him and close shut the jaws of Oblivion.
Yeah, I know, terrible impression. But Fallout 3 had you urgently escaping the vault before toning the main quest back down to a search. Seems they learned from overemphasizing Oblivion. Now, Skyrim. You get 2 main quests in that, the Alpha Dragon quest and the Beta Civil War quest, and they're both introduced to you in the interactive tutorial. As soon as you get out of that cave, though, is your best chance to walk away from them. Because if you go with Rayloff or Hadvar to Riverwood, the urgency continually rises from a role-playing perspective. And Fallout 4, wow, Bethesda's first mistake of overemphasizing the main quest came back. First time since Oblivion. And the problem is you had a voice protagonist constantly bringing it back up if you didn't do it. And sometimes he'd even still go on about Sean if you'd completed the main quest. Yes. I mean, voice acting was good, just frustrating. So, enter Starfield, the slow burn mystery that combines all the previous games. You get the Oblivion to Fallout 4 interactive tutorial in the mine, and on the surface with the gunplay, and then space, and then Crete. Then you reach the lodge, and then the game Morrowinds you. Yes, Morrowinding you is now a word. It Morrowinds you with the vast open world space and change of pace. This is a mystery. Do you want to be part of it? Yes or no? If not, bugger off, go explore. Side quests. The quirky quests, you know the ones. Now Starfield has a unique way of giving you the side quests. You can still stumble into them, but the majority seem to be tied to overhearing rumours from what I can see. Then of course there are the faction quests. I personally got drafted to be a spy whilst playing football, otherwise known as soccer in the US, and that should tell you all you need to know. Companion quest, you know, how to make friends, influence people, probably into bed. And of course our old friends introduced in Skyrim, the Radiant quests, the A to B to C to getting your gold, normally. Many Radiant quests begin with the NPCs talking amongst themselves though in Starfield, sometimes so convincingly that you think they're just background noise for the feel of an alive world. Yet only to find that interacting them gives you another Radiant quest, even if the quest is just a diplomatic back and forth between an envoy and a security guard. It's quite clever that they've managed to take fetch quests and turned them into... what's the word? Immersive? I mean, it gets overused, the word immersive, but it does feel immersive. You're just like, oh, I'm solving a dispute between these two people. And yet you didn't realise, but that was a Radiant quest that's just been dumped on you. Quite clever.
Why else would he be going through all this?
Reason number 2 is replayability. Now this may be a controversial take, but I'll explain why I chose the order later. Now Bethesda's games are replayable for 8 reasons. Yes, I know, a list inside a list. We're doing listception. But number 1, they always have interesting universes. Universes capable of telling their own stories. Even Fallout 76, the multiplayer game, has environmental stories all over the place, making you ponder what went on. Starfield's universe is vast, but even still, the little notes and dead bodies that tell the stories are still there. 2. The interesting epic quests. And you can put a slash in there if you want. Think about this. Bethesda is the place where you get these sort of things. Saving the world from demonic gates. Finding Dog Dad inside a VR simulation. Making all the guests at a house party paranoid as they die one by one. Following a giant robot throwing nukes at people. Fighting a world-eating dragon in the afterlife. Running around a paintbrush world killing trolls with white spirit paint remover. There's always something interesting in a Bethesda game's quest list, and so far Starfield has me gripped with the mystery of the main quest. But it's the ability to hire the crew from people I've encountered on the quest that has me impressed. These characters are no longer one and done quest characters. 3. The interesting factions. Yes, we all know the XYZ guilds, the Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, etc. Then there's the Dark Brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave, the Institute. Say what you will about the quality of Bethesda's factions or the writing, the concepts of those factions always stick with you. And they're quite famous even in the gaming sphere. And so far Starfield has done that too. Constellation feels like an eclectic mix of people. The pirates feel like pirates. The United Colonies feels utopian and dystopian all at the same time. The Varun however you pronounce it, the snake worshippers. They are the bogeymen whispered about, in case they hear. Reason number 4, it's full of lore. I know, I'm a poet and I know it. It would take too long to go through the Elder Scrolls and Fallout lore and then add Starfields on top, so let me just say it this way. Bethesda had a timeline ready to go on their website before the game came out if you wanted to get a feel for the lore, and the amount of conversations in earshot or correspondence laying around in game for you to read is as vast as you would expect from a Bethesda world. Reason number 5 is the deep character creation systems. Now Bethesda has been accused of watering character creation down since Oblivion, in favour of their new approach from Skyrim onwards, of what you do is who you are. But somehow they figured out a way to merge the two systems, the ones that were there before and the ones that came after. And they've done that by increasing your choices of history and traits, then adding challenges to the skill system, so that shooting 100 rats isn't enough to be considered a crack shot anymore. You need to shoot 20 rats, then 30 in the head, then 50 in the whiskers whilst they're jumping through the air juggling balls. Now I jest, but you get the idea. There's no more leaving the character in stealth against a wall with your button held down to level up the skill whilst you go and grab a drink. Now the first 5 are what you get at launch. The next 3 things that give Bethesda's games replayability come after. Small DLCs, expansion-sized DLCs, and mods, and they speak for themselves. The DLCs will give you more locations, lore, and feel to the game, whilst the modding community will give whatever they can imagine to the game. So, we are now at reason number 1 for why Bethesda's games are so immersive and replayable. And reason number 1, of course, is the world spaces. Each Bethesda universe is a canvas, where each layer has been designed to work on top of the next, starting with the world spaces. From Morrowind onwards, every game has contained a completely explorable, air quotes, on-limits world space within its borders. See a mountain? Go and climb it. See a rich NPC? Rob his house. Swim to the bottom of the local lake and see what's there. There's complete freedom to go anywhere and explore. Inside, outside, demonic realms, VR simulations, magical paintbrush worlds, anywhere. In a Bethesda game, you can go to areas set aside for later quests, and the worst you're going to find is a locked section or room kept off limits until the required time. But even this is not always the case or really that common. These completely free world spaces are filled with interesting cities and towns which are full of NPCs with their own AI routines and dialogue packages, routines that create an emulation of life within the simulation of the game's existence. Eating, drinking, shopping, sleeping, locking their doors at night, using their furniture, minor chatter with the other NPCs. Even after disposing of all the dialogues with the player interface, you can still just sit back and watch the world go by inside a Bethesda universe, if you so choose to do so. Now, having said all that, Starfield is probably the first Bethesda universe where the see that mountain you can go there has caveats. It's still true, but simulating an environment this large, even with procedurally generated content, requires loading screens or zones. But don't worry, everything you can visually see within the boundaries of the universe is still there. It's just that if it's a bit of a trek, you might have to travel through some loading screens. Luckily, a game with spaceships is the game where this makes the most sense on the Bethesda engine. And don't get me wrong, the game doesn't let you land on a planet and walk around its equator, generating the planet as you go, No Man's Sky style. However, neither could No Man's Sky if that game was trying to simulate every person, item, ship, etc. for 3 to 4 kilometers in every direction from your landing zone. even when you weren't close enough to generate them. The procedurally generated slabs of land that get kept in the memory of Starfield for you to go back to whenever you feel like it may only contain handcrafted bases procedurally generated into that slab, but it will keep everything as you leave it. You can go to an area, load it up, never explore, bugger off, come back and then finally explore it. It remembers what it's created for you, okay? So, remember that in a Bethesda game the NPC could be asleep when you approach because the game is keeping track of things like that. And yes, I know I've just said everything you can see is there, then I've said the slabs are procedurally generated. But if you pay attention, everything handmade can be seen off in the distance on the horizon, and everything procedurally generated can't be seen outside of the slabs. It doesn't promise you a thought that you can't go and invade. It keeps the procedurally generated things nicely tucked into the landscapes, I've noticed. Quite clever, but also understandable why they would do this, because they're simulating everything. Knife, forks, spoons, styrofoam cups, all with their own havoc physics and all the rest of it. It's not being generated on the fly only when you interact with it, like games like Minecraft or No Man's Sky do. They're there all the time, and it's got simulations of sleeping patterns, security guard patterns, all that sort of nonsense in it. There's more going on than you think. However, the universe itself is interesting. It's lore-filled with items, ships, factions and characters who all feel real, but although you cannot follow every NPC back to their house, Elder Scrolls style, it thematically fits that there are too many people to bother doing that with in a futuristic setting. There are still some NPCs that feel important enough that they should have places to go or beds to sleep in, especially the shopkeepers, but it's a minor issue at best. Many side and radiant mini-quests that feel like nothing until you interact with them are hidden in plain sight, making the world feel truly alive. You can leave your mark on this universe with your actions. Turning your ship into whatever you need, or creating a settlement on a world and placing NPCs into their own new little society there is also quite amusingly fun. The guards will still notice your actions, whether good, bad or quest related. Crewmates on your ships comment on whether you slept or if they're still waiting for an assignment. And the new conversation style Oblivion inspired persuasion game feels like a normal part of the regular conversation tree. And it's all done with a simple UI, a user interface on top, obviously designed for consoles again, and containing the daft decision of putting the distracting pop-ups in your direct central vision, which has already been fixed by modders of course, but otherwise a decent UI for exploring this world. So that's the Bethesda DNA whys, the fourth place, gameplay loop mechanics, and what the game has mostly been judged by, hence why there are some judgmental reviews. The third place, quests, still very Bethesdary, if that's a word, I've just made that up too. Second place, the replayability. And the first place, the world spaces. And if you're wondering why about the order, because Fallout 4's quests were weak enough to drag down the replayability of the game, but not the world space. That's why world space is in 1 and replayability is in 2nd. So that's our double helix Bethesda DNA explained. Why Bethesda's games are immersive and replayable, but not the how. The how is the fifth reason, and it's the much maligned creation engine. The creation engine. The meme of Bethesda needing a new engine will probably never die. I'll die before that dies, because those making the meme want an engine that does what they want it to do, not what Bethesda want it to do. They tend to want a fast-paced engine designed for high detail, low impact, low item, compact world spaces. Things that can do pew 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 on rails, first-person shooters, open worlds where the items drop when you generate them. It's not what Bethesda's after. Bethesda wants an engine capable of being filled with multiple NPCs, multiple items, and the ability to play in that physical sandbox however you want, and it remembers what you do. They want a world space where you can fill your house with cheese wheels, potatoes, your starships and spaceships with sandwiches, or climb to the top of the rooftops of Solitude and throw tomatoes into buckets on the streets below. To them, the creation engine doesn't need to create the prettiest worlds. It needs to be able to create the grittiest sandbox, a 3D sandbox, creating worlds that come to life themselves when all the AI elements interact with themselves. Their worlds are three-dimensional AI onions that interact with the parts of each other to create a whole that's greater than those parts. And to add all that on top, the creation engine, extremely moddable, and a modding community that knows how to use it. On to performance. So far my own experience has been pretty smooth in terms of performance. However, the usual Bethesda bugs and quirks are there. Plants that fall through the furniture, conversations that happen the wrong way round because you spoke to the wrong person first. Background NPCs teleporting into the middle of your conversation camera because they want to go where that person is stood. Scanner mode button being easy to catch whilst trying to press melee attack. And that melee attack button being the same button on the scanner to activate photo mode. Sorry, PTSD. But on the whole, it's Bethesda's most stable release in my opinion. Even more stable than Fallout 4, which again was more stable than Skyrim. And Skyrim had mammoths falling out of the sky, if I remember correctly, so you know. However, as always, people see the creation engine doing 30 frames per second and think, not optimized. I tend to see the pattern we've had since Oblivion. Maybe I'm just being an romantic, enthusiastic optimist. However, this is my theory. Bethesda get the game working at 30 frames per second and ultra settings on above average to good hardware now because they know their game's going to be played for 5 to 10 years and it'll be getting 60 plus frames per second when it's still being played by the hardcore in 5 to 10 years. Might just be my wishful thinking on that theory, but they re-released Skyrim on 3 generations of consoles. If Starfield does well enough, the next Xbox, the next generation of PC video cards. Yeah, see where I'm going? So there we have it. An unorthodox and weird way to do a review, I'll admit. But it was never about the box ticking exercise that compares all games to each other purely on gameplay mechanics only. It was about comparing what Starfield is to what Starfield should be if Bethesda have done it right and gone back to their own unique style. Is it a big lore-filled universe you can feel immersed in? Yes, it is. Is the exploring worth it? Is the loot worth it? Is the potential shenanigans you can get up to worth it? Yes. Does the AI, factions, NPCs and their dialogue make you feel like you could be an angelic saviour or the biggest demon to terrorise the settled systems and the universe? Yes, and I can't say terrorise. I've tried many times and it just refuses to cooperate. But you get what I was trying to get to. Can you look at the perks and traits and see another 2 to 3 to, 200 plus playthroughs with a different role-playing behaviour? Yes, in fact, you probably run out of names before you run out of ideas. Is it filled with talking NPCs and non-talking player character? Oh yes. And can you see an engine that, although mocked and memed, is designed to allow those houses full of cheese, starships full of sandwiches?
Question 10. Who is indisputably the most important person involved 101?
Starships that look like the Enterprise, the Millennium Falcon, a Borg Cube, or even Red Dwarf.
He who shelters us from the harshness of the atomic wasteland.
An engine that, despite its flaws, feels like it does a decent job of
And to whom we owe everything we have, including our lives.
emulating the habitats of humanity in space. Yes.
Pencils down, people. That's it. The infamous goat.
And for that last one, if you feel like I turned into Mr. Broch and you should have answered the Overseer, I'll understand. The way I see it, Starfield does all of this and more. It is a return to form for Bethesda. The Bethesda DNA and all of its traits of the previous games is seeping out of every pore. My experience can be summed up again with when I was being arrested for playing with a child's football. Now I know under the bonnet / hood of the engine, I know, I just ticked enough of the boxes to generate the quest starting, but it felt real in a way that only Bethesda games can. I didn't pay attention to the fact that picking things up now can be considered stealing instead of taking them. So it felt the way Bethesda games do, chaotically real. Sometimes, Bethesda's AI systems, that are mocked by so many, feel like they are those monkeys with the typewriters that have somehow written Shakespeare. So the question is, does Starfield have Bethesda's DNA? And my review opinion is, bloody hell, of course it definitely does. So I'll leave you with this one last thought. Multiplayer! Multiplayer. Starfield is an epic Bethesda-style single-player RPG universe full of quests, stories, and a universe that begs to be explored. And it's perfect like that. However, I could see a Rockstar-style GTA or Red Dead Online separate mode working. Remove all the story missions, maybe make a few generic new story missions for the online mode, where you are not the person the world is built around, and then run the world on all the Radiant quests and some of the side quests that could be done, and right, that person's done it, it's not available to anybody else. Yeah? Those type of Radiant quests, that kind of setup. Truckers, police, pirates, small groups, explorers, bounty hunters, what's the word? Diggers? I don't know, bandits, whatever. A small co-op experience, I don't know, maybe the size of something like Valheim, 10 at the most. A small co-op online experience. It could be doable without impacting the beauty of the original game. Run the world on the interactable Radiant quest where you overhear people and you just go and talk to them, and it's like, oh, just talk to this person and solve my problem. Oh, done. Or, oh, I'll go to this mission board, do this mission. Boom, boom, done. It feels like it could be doable. Ah, but Rabidon, you haven't come back to the starships and the load screens. Ah, but I have. I'm here now. Right. I'm not even going to bother scripting this bit because it's going to be randomly from the heart. Yeah. How to put it? Bethesda games are an experience. They're not a gamey game. They're not mechanics games. They're not, I figured out how to climb outside the map so I can snipe you from it. It's none of that. They're experiences. They're RPGs that say, right, this is a world created with all these AI subroutines that are running it. Feel it. And you get in the dreaded word immersed and immersion. The dreaded words, because it gets overused, obviously, immersion. We have the ability to feel like we're in Bethesda worlds. It's probably why when people say they've played Skyrim or Fallout 4 in VR, they say it's just another level of an experience of those games. Because they feel like they're there. It's probably, I don't know, Bethesda to me, and Bethesda's games, going all fanboy, shall we say, I think it's the closest our generation is getting to the Star Trek holodeck. We get in there, we dream up crazy things, and we go and explore and feel and try to smell it even though we can't smell it. And then we bring up the console commands and disable the safety protocols, and then an alien invades and we end up pregnant. I don't know. You get me. And coming back to the ships, because I've probably rambled for about 2 minutes now already and not even mentioned it, that immersion factor that we get from Bethesda being like the modern holodeck for us is right. If we can't fly the ship, why not have an autopilot? And if we're not going to have an autopilot, then why not have videos that hide the entire load screen? Because it takes you out of it. When you're immersed and you're role playing, it's like, okay, well, I've took off. I've just spawned in space. I took off and I see myself fly up towards the sun, and then I spawn in space, facing the planet where I would spawn if I grav jumped. Oh, that's took me out of it. Why have I not spawned in orbit? Why have I not spawned whatever? But even that, why am I spawning at all? Why is there not a video like many games do? I mean, the Uncharted series, Metal Gear Solid, and because they've not got as much. I've gone on about how much things are being simulated in the background, but just give us the ship flying out of orbit, out of the atmosphere into orbit. Pan the camera behind the back of the ship, and then give us control of the ship without any black loading screen. Do the same when we're landing. Start flying into the atmosphere. Don't cut the video. Load everything in the background. Fly the ship all the way down, even though we're not the ones flying it. Fly it all the way down and land it. And then pan the camera around and give it us. Sometimes you'll land, and you don't even get the landing cutscene. You're there. And sometimes you land, and you end up outside the ship. It's like, I didn't even stand up. I've told it to land on the surface, and next thing I'm stood outside my ship with Sarah Morgan or Vasco telling me something. It's like, what? I didn't even see the ship land. That takes you out. It's that part of it. Mechanically, it's an irritation. But in terms of the dreaded word immersion again, I would settle for a third-person camera of following the ship all the way down and landing. I mean, if to give you a first-person camera of just, right, the Skyrim horse cart ride, the Starfield elevator ride, or the lift ride, whichever side of the pond you are on. It's on rails, but it lets you look around, I'd gladly let them load that up. Right, I press land, it loads up an on-rails video, and I get to move my head around as the ship lands itself. And it all gets loaded in the background, the place I'm going to. Give me that. Yeah? Just give me that. Please, come on. I'd love something like that. And I know there's people out there that would also love it. But you know what the best bit is? You could just have an option in the menu to say, skip load screen movies and just straight upload. And I'm sure the people that want to get straight to the planet and run around shooting things could just tick it and go. And those of us that want to be immersed in the feeling of what we're doing could watch it and enjoy it. So yeah, that was the ramble section near the end. Probably added 5-6 minutes there for no reason. But you feel where I'm coming from. I hope you do. So, in conclusion, there are parts of this game that could be used to make it look like a memeable mess. However, I think that is a problem, not the problem. It's not the game, it's you. if you're the type of person doing that. Or should I say, it's not the game, it's them. Memes, they're a modern, fast-paced societal invention. But with Starfield, Bethesda have reintroduced a slow, methodical universe with RPG structures run by AI to a gaming population no longer expecting that. Grab your pen and paper, or if you're a youngster, open the note app on your phone because you're going to need it. With Starfield, despite how well it tracks these things for you, the quest tracker's pretty damn good. Sometimes you'll feel like chronicling your own adventures and maybe writing a story about them. Where games like Elden Ring have every detail in the world pre-planned, and games like Baldur's Gate has every possible reaction to a dialogue decision planned out in a flowchart, Starfield doesn't. It has layers of AI rules in place built into a universe prepared to throw chaos theory at you, and do it for the lols. For me, it's an indirect, methodical masterpiece of a Bethesda world, and it's a damn fine game. Not the best gamey game. If you're looking to abuse the mechanics for the best way to win, I mean, if you want to win all the time, the mechanics that can be abused, make yourself feel mighty because you've figured out how to abuse them, but then you're going to feel shallow and hollow. Go ahead. I don't think it's the game for you. But instead, if you're after a highly replayable living universe, which is probably the best in the current gaming sphere, Starfield is for you. I've been Robbydon, and if you've made it this far, I hope my fart of an opinion smelt like roses, and you'll like, comment and subscribe. So we shall meet again. If you want to call me a fanboy, go ahead. You want to tell me my opinion's completely wrong? Go ahead. It'll generate traffic for me. Have fun. Bye-bye for now.
This is where we belong.